people from around the world to participate in this dream.
Our school in Dilijan is an international boarding school which will attract the kids all over the world.
It's a community of like-minded people who think globally and feel a sense of responsibility towards the future of the world.
I send my full support to Dilijan College and wish it and everyone there an enlightened and successful future.
Dreaming with Veronica in 2006 about this project. It looks like a crazy idea, and now there's reality.
Good job, guys. We made it.
We hope every graduate from the school dedicates a small piece of their future lives, keeping connected, keeping supporting, keeping giving advice. We'd like this experience to be something you want to share with future generations.
Hello everyone, this is the first week of UWC Dilijan and we want to say volunteers!
Gracias.
شكرا جزيلا.
Dankeschön. Muchas gracias.
Спасибо большое. Dankeschön.
Не было труда, что вы делаете.
Спасибо.
Muchas gracias.
Суртано.
Obrigado.
United by 50 years and inspired by 50 years and committed to 50 years more. Be a force for good. United by 50 years and inspired by 50 years and committed to 50 years more.
My warmest congratulations to UWC.
Thank you to the entire UWC Southeast Asian community.
50 years and committed to 50 years more. Be a force for good. United by 50 years and inspired by 50 years and committed to 50 years more. Be a force for good. United by
Welcome to the UWC at 60th anniversary celebrations. Please join me in welcoming the chair of the UWC International Council, Kike Basad, for the opening.
Thank you very much and good day, everyone. My name is Kike Basad, and on behalf of the UWC Council, which I have the honor to chair, I would like to give you all a warm welcome to this UWC 60th anniversary commencement event. I remember the first time I ever heard of UWC. It was exactly 35 years ago, in the year 1987, when I was 13 years old. My brother, Jose Manuel, 4 years my elder, had just announced, out of the blue, that he had been selected for the final phase of the selection process for a scholarship to attend a 2-year educational program called UWC. He had submitted his application without saying anything to anyone, and now that he was called for a face-to-face interview in Madrid, he had to get our parents' signed permission. Of course, we were all a bit surprised and quite shocked. My brother, who I idolized, was perhaps the most intelligent of the 4 siblings, but did by no means have a great academic record. While preparing for the interview, he mentioned that there will be about 200 candidates, but that there were only 2 scholarships. Somehow relieved, my dad said, "Oh, then, no problem, sure you can go." A few days later, we received a phone call at home confirming that he was one of the chosen ones. My brother was ecstatic and my dad flabbergasted. If a movement like UWC was recognizing in my brother his enthusiasm, potential, unique personality and virtues, in spite of his unexceptional grades, then surely UWC was something else. This was the beginning of a family love story with UWC. I remember my brother calling after arriving to Atlantic College and telling us that his roommate was from Bhutan, and us running to the World Atlas to check where the hell was this never-heard small Himalayan kingdom. In the next 2 years, our house in Barcelona became a point of pilgrimage from many of my brother's friends, with at some stage hosting a dozen students in the house sofas and corridor. How could I not become interested in the idea of sharing a similar experience? In spring 1991, it was my turn to apply. Unfortunately, the Spanish National Committee had closed down the previous year after a catastrophic management and with a debt with UWC Pearson of 1 full scholarship that we still haven't paid. Beyond that, all the information of the past UWC Spanish alumni was stored in a shoebox. My only possibility was what was then called international quota. And we managed to arrange an interview with the then vice principal of AC, the late Dion Glover. I remember traveling on my own from Spain to Wales and facing an interview at Dion's office, interrupted several times by phone calls that he had to attend. Among many things, he asked me, what would I do if I was president of the United States of America for 1 day? I'm not sure what I responded, but I probably did say more sensible things than some of the recent US presidents. And I was offered a place, not a scholarship, to attend the AC. My parents, which have always been the most supportive people, were happy to invest in my education. But I always had the feeling that my UWC status was a little bit second class in comparison to those really earning a scholarship. Perhaps this was the root for my commitment to the movement, not only during those 2 fantastic years, but also throughout the rest of my life. Needless to say, having the opportunity to attend AC and becoming part of the UWC family was a tremendous life-changing experience. This is a common statement shared by many of us alumni, but also by many non-alumni. I will always remember discussing this with 2 great examples of members of the National Committee family, Piotr Hollis from Poland and Berta Fraguas, who has directed the Spanish National Committee for over 30 years. None of them alumni, and both as devoted and passionate about UWC as you can imagine. Also, I remember one poignant speech by Peter Howe, nearly brought to tears, in Cardiff during a particularly heated UWC Council meeting, where he defended his passion, commitment for UWC, and right to be considered an equal, in spite of not being an alum. And that is certain. The UWC movement is much more than its alumni. It involves them, of course, but also their families, the IO staff, the people working and for each of the individual schools and colleges, the members of the council and various boards and committees, the volunteers and national committees, the participants in UWC short courses, and the many, many, many people that somehow feel connected to UWC for whichever reason. We are all a large family, as I like to think in the true African sense. During the 2 years at AC, and particularly ever after, I have experienced this unique and reassuring feeling of belonging. Belonging to the UWC family, belonging to a community of idealists, belonging to a purpose in life. We should all work together towards a better world and a better future, or as the celebration slogan states, striving to change the world since 1962. And above all, belonging to a supportive and caring network. Admittedly, also belonging to a community of professional contrarians and disagreeers, Not in the negative sense, of course, but in the sense of people who simply do not accept complacency and embrace disagreement, if this disagreement can trigger debate, dialogue, changes, and positive impact. I have never met a community with such a nearly pathological willingness to disagree, polemize, argue, and counter-argue. On the other hand, I have never met a community which embraces you so caringly and respects you for who you are and what you stand for. As Musimbi Kanyora, our chair of the board, said this morning, UWC is made of superstars which do extraordinary things, but mostly by ordinary good people doing ordinary good things. Today, we officially start the celebration of UWC's 60th anniversary, an outstanding feat and a major hallmark. What was on Kurt Hand's mind more than 6 decades ago was a genuine and generous willingness to bring people together after one of history's darkest periods. His strategy targeted the education of the youth as a long-term constructive approach to implant globally the seeds for a more caring and altruistic planet. Our world today remains an imperfect one. Inequities have become larger and conflicts keep arising, with a significant proportion of the world's population living unacceptably under the thresholds of poverty or at risk of displacement. New threats such as climate change or emerging pandemics are further threatening our collective well-being. Thus, the rationale for UWC remains as valid and necessary as ever, and the UWC family must remain radical and resilient in the pursuit of and fulfillment of our mission. Let us toast for UWC today as a collective movement and for each of its various constituencies. Let us renew our vows in what we so strongly believe. Let us hope that our small but powerful organization can continue seeding and collecting the results of those efforts. Let's keep pushing the boundaries of deliberate diversity, peace searching, and a sustainable future. Let's keep offering the youth the opportunity to change their lives and become life changers themselves. This is not, as Kurt Hand surely imagined, a task that we want to ensure exclusively for our generation, but rather for the ones to come. Thank you very much, and happy birthday, UWC.
Dear members of the United World College community, of our family, I am particularly delighted to take part in launching the start of celebrations for UWC's 60th anniversary year. As president of the movement over the last 27 years, I have had the immense privilege of witnessing this global community grow from strength to strength. So much more than just a network of 18 schools across 4 continents, we are an international community of students, alumni, staff, volunteers, donors, and partners, all united under a common goal: to make education a force for peace. I'm so very proud of and awed by the dedicated efforts that have built this movement over the last 60 years. Created at the height of the Cold War, when trust and dialogue among the US, the UK, Europe, and the Soviet Union had broken down, the founding of the first college at UWC Atlantic in Wales represented a bold reimagining of society. The vision of our founder, Kurt Hand, was to create an educational model centered on the unification of people from diverse backgrounds, nations, and cultures to build a more hopeful and peaceful world. Through the years, this community has remained steadfast, undaunted by whatever challenges have come its way, resolute in its mission to educate for peace and a more equitable and sustainable future. As a worldwide movement, we believe that your commitment, determination, and conviction, both individual and collective, will change the world for the better. In whatever capacity you join us today, whether you are a council or board member, a new student, an alum, a parent, a member of staff, a volunteer, a donor, or a member of one of our partner organizations, please know that your contribution matters. The challenge of building pathways to peace is more relevant in today's world than ever, as we bear witness to brutal conflicts taking place across the world, dividing people across political, economic, racial, and religious fault lines, we are called to remember our common humanity. We are called to live out the UWC values of integrity, compassion, and tolerance as we strive to develop solutions to the world's most pressing problems. Every time I meet a UWC student, my hope for the future is reinvigorated. And as I consider the strength of the global community that supports our students, I feel confident that UWC's positive impact will continue to be felt across the globe for many more decades to come. Happy 60th birthday, United World Colleges. I feel privileged to be part of this incredible journey, and I look forward to celebrating with some of you in person at the planned anniversary events coming in the days, weeks, and months ahead. For now, enjoy the rest of this event as we celebrate the past and look forward to a bright future ahead. Thank you very much.
Well, at this time, we will listen to the origins of the UWC movement. Please welcome the chair of UWC Atlantic, Jill Longson.
So in the planning of the 60th anniversary, we knew we would need to sharpen up our knowledge on the history of the college and the history of the movement. And we turned to our governor's minute books going back 60 years. And believe me, they are this thick, and there are 5 of them. And this was a daunting thought that we were going to be trawling through these. And I thought, who can we delegate this to, who is an exceptionally good historian, who's very good at detail, who understands the truth and the history of UWC. And I came up with a name that some of you will remember and recognize, and that is Keith Clark. Now, Keith, as some of you know him, he's a man of detail, and he won't use 10 words when he could use 100. So if I was to read out everything that Keith had come up with in terms of the history, I think I'd be here for most of the evening, and clearly you don't want me to do that. So what I am going to do, though, is just highlight 6 themes that run through, I think, the history that he's unearthed and some of the myths that we've had around the formation of the movement, the founding of the college, some of the things around the IB. I'll try and keep it short and tight, but I really would love you to go and see the exhibition tomorrow where some of this is evidenced because these big, thick, heavy minute books from the governing body are all there for you to see. I think the first thing is many of us think it was solely Kurt Hahn who was the founder of UWC Atlantic. And in a sense, that's right. But there was also, they met, Lawrence Darvel, who was a NATO chief, they met in Paris in 1955, so a long time before the college was established. Both had a vision, and it was a joint vision, to establish an experimental school that could make a significant contribution towards increasing international understanding. That sounds very familiar. Kurt Hahn worked harder on the concepts over the next 5 years for sure, and Atlantic College was incorporated as early as 1960, and Lawrence Darvel was named the first chair of the board, and they were both named co-founders of the college, which is something I didn't know, but we've unearthed that through the books. The second thing that I think, certainly going back a few years, that we were aware of was that there was a myth that UWC was established later in 1967. And of course, United World Colleges was first used and encouraged to be used by Mountbatten, who was the then president. But we know for a fact, because Keith has unearthed it in the minute books for sure, that the concept of having more than one Atlantic college was discussed right from the very start. And as early as 1961, Hahn used a NATO Defence College reunion to start persuading informal committees to be established to select students, as early as 1961. So already the concept of national committees, our unique system, was already starting to be seeded. And as early as 1962, there was an ambition about what was later called a movement, that we all know is called a movement. There was an observation that other European countries would form Atlantic colleges, as they were going to be called themselves. And what's really fascinating for Pearson College is as early as 1963, the prospect of having an Atlantic college emerged when a campus was offered in Banff in Canada. And of course, we know that never materialized, and thank goodness, because we've got that beautiful campus in Vancouver, on Vancouver Island. So it prompted the idea of actually having separate international committees as early as 1963, a separate international committee, and the international representatives were invited to what was effectively an international council meeting, not dissimilar to this one, but just a much smaller number of people, and that was started to be held as an annual event as early as 1964. And even as early as 1966, 11 national committees existed. And what was lovely about the quotes coming out of the minute books was Keith found a quote from Lord Mountbatten saying, "I'm convinced that Atlantic College could and must be a real force for international sanity and understanding," which I thought was lovely. The third thing is the myth around 100% scholarship. I think there's a myth that's been floating around right from the start. That's how Atlantic was set up and established, and that just wasn't the case. We know from the minute books now that there were fee payers right from the start. But we also know just how outlandish, and that was Keith's word, how outlandish the ambitions for philanthropy were. Of course, we know Anton and Bess donated the castle, £65,000 back in the day. That's 1.3 million at today's prices. But they set us such an ambitious target to raise over £800,000 for the first 4 years. That's incredible. Now, clearly they never hit that target, and the evidence in the minute books suggests that then they had to bring temporary fee payers in. Have you heard this before? Temporary fee payers in to increase in order to cover a shortfall in philanthropic gaps. And early donations came from just extraordinary sources. British Steel, Ford, and the most weird one we found, and we have no idea why this was the case, but a gold bar was given by the French Trade Union, of all people. Weird. And that leads neatly on to how the first girls came. Now, you'll notice, the alert amongst you will have noticed I've not mentioned Desmond Hoare yet, who was the first principal. An incredible man. And as we all know, just as an aside, behind every incredible man is an incredible woman, and Naomi Hoare was a fantastic principal's wife, and she was known as making the wetsuits for the students. That was one of her major roles that she did, and I thought that was just a lovely, lovely thing to do. She actually is still here with us, and she's in a nursing home in Ireland, and she's 103 years old. And I wrote to her the other day, and I did say we would think about her during our celebrations over the weekend. The first girls at the college, or the first girl at the college, actually wasn't the cohort that we've all come to know and love. It was the daughter. It was Stephanie. So she went to the college very early on. But the story as to how the first girls appeared is really very interesting. And if Keith were here, he would give you a long explanation about the consternation that the board had about horror of horrors allowing female students to join. And the end, it came about rather fortuitously. Desmond Hoare was interviewed by The Observer in 1965, and he was asked, why aren't there any female students at the college? He was quoted as saying, if someone gives me £40,000, I'll open a girls' dormitory and I'll have it set up by September. And that was in June, was the quote. This remark led to a spontaneous donation by Mr. Moresi. And that name may be familiar to some of you, an American living in Italy. They turned out to be some of our most long-standing supporters from the 60s and 70s. And they sponsored numerous different students, including co-years of mine, in 10s and 15 people per cohort. And they developed supported a lot of the developments on campus. And female students, female members of the council will be delighted to know that in the minute books, I guess it was Desmond Hoare, said girls were outperforming boys with virtually every aspect, which I just thought was quite funny. The other thing I think is quite interesting is the IB. So the International School of Geneva are frequently claiming that they established the IB and they did it all on their own and, you know, all that jazz. But in a nutshell, we did it together. And conversations, again, this started really early on, started as early as 1962, when Alex Peterson was assigned by Kurt Hahn to be responsible for the planning of a new academic curriculum. And interestingly, an aside about him, he went on to later become the first Director General of the IB. David Sutcliffe commented in 1965, "It's no exaggeration to claim that the shape of the IB diploma programme was the collaboration of staff of these two colleges." And we know for a fact that after that, of course, we've had numerous different involvements and developments coming out of staff not just from Atlantic, but from numerous other colleges. And there's one I particularly want to mention, and that's the very great Andrew McElhose, who'll be there tomorrow, who was my economics teacher back in the day. He's still coming in from time to time and teaching economics when we need him. He was instrumental in the development of the Theory of Knowledge course. I mean, that there's absolutely no doubt. And of course, as we all know, Atlantic went on to be the first all-IB school in the world. The decision was taken in 1968. You'll see that in the books tomorrow. And students are arriving from 69. They did the 2-year IB curriculum and ditched the national curriculum, and they graduated in 1971. And the linkages between the two organisations, that's quite remarkable too. Some of us will remember Derek Blackman. He was Director General of the IB and then became Vice Chair of UWC International. Great friend still. And Robert Blackburn became Deputy Director General of the IB and then went to head UWC International Office. And in the next decades, Atlantic, particularly, UWC Atlantic particularly, was instrumental in the development of numerous school-based syllabuses, you know, global politics, environmental systems, design technology, led by fantastic teachers that we had at the college. And I guess this brings me on to my final point, as how many staff and alumni from UWC Atlantic were or continue to be involved with the wider movement. And let's pay credit to two of our amazing UWC titans, David Sutcliffe and Colin Jenkins. I mean, they had so much influence on the whole movement, and it's emotional to even talk about them both. They were involved with not just 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 colleges, but 7 in total, including the founding head of UWC Adriatic and co-founding UWC Mostar. And it's weird, but they both died within a week of each other a couple of years ago. And some of us went to both funerals back to back. Colin was my director of studies, and his line was, if you're mentally tired, do something physical. If you're physically tired, do something mental. And if you're both, sleep. But I can't finish without actually paying tribute to the great and wonderful Pelham Linfield Roberts, who's in the audience somewhere, I hope, who has been on his 3rd UWC headship after being a teacher at the college. People like Barry Drake, who you'll meet tomorrow, was the founding interim head of Changshu, and he was the teacher at the college. And we've also got numerous alumni, Kike is sitting in the front row for one of them, who've been involved with UWC International or national committees, or have been chairs or board members of other schools and colleges. So I think it's quite poignant that so many UWC Atlantic alumni and staff have been involved across the movement. And to me, just to finish, it all speaks to the seamlessness between the college and the movement, and this focus on the mission, the affection that we've got for the movement, which is really evident here today, and a strong dedication to the cause. And all I can say is long may that continue. Thank you.
Please welcome the head of UWC Maastricht, Lodewijk van Oort.
I've been asked to speak about the history and growth of the movement and to keep it short. And I will try and do one of the two. And whenever you ask Keith Clark to go into the archives and write a history, and you ask a history teacher to do something similar, you of course end up with a similar but also slightly different narrative. And I didn't have access to the record books and the board meeting minutes, but I did spend a lot of time in the archive underneath the dining hall in Atlantic College when I arrived at the college as a history teacher. and it was deemed that I had time at hand to sort that place out. So I spent many afternoons and some evenings and weekends sorting out the mess that I found. There was no elephant in the room, but there were mice and rats and other animals there. And I found a fascinating brochure, and I think, Jill, you already alluded to it, called Towards 100 Atlantic Colleges. And that is quite ambitious. The name UWC did not yet exist, but the ambition was there to make this a global movement from the very beginning. So Atlantic College was first. I think this weekend that is something we absolutely need to celebrate. But who came second? That is a contentious issue, and the Pearson alumni and the UWC SEA people sometimes have to be separated from each other when this is debated. Let me answer that question once and for all. Somewhere in 1969, Lester B. Pearson, the former Prime Minister of Canada, Nobel Prize laureate, came to visit Desmond Hoare at Atlantic College. He was interested in establishing a Atlantic College in Canada, but it was also said that maybe the name Atlantic College wasn't entirely appropriate for a college in Canada. Lord Mountbatten joined that meeting and agreed and said if we're going to have a college in Canada, we should also look at East Asia, where he had a lot of connections because of his previous work in the British military. And the idea was to set up an association of schools that could be very different, but were unified by the same mission and the same ideals. And apparently it was Lord Mountbatten who said, let's call this the United World Colleges Association. Now, who joined second? Atlantic College changed its name in United World College of the Atlantic. Pearson had the idea to call itself the United World College of the Pacific. And only after Pearson died just before the college opened, it was called the Lester B. Pearson College, United World College of the Pacific. A long name, as there were other UWCs with long names in those days. In 1971, the Singapore International School opened under the name Singapore International School and became a member of the UWC Association. Pearson opened 3 years later under the name United World College of the Pacific, the Lester B. Pearson United World College of the Pacific. And then a year later, Singapore International School changed its name into the United World College of Southeast Asia. Who came first? It is for you to decide. Who came second? Who came second? We may never know. Lord Mountbatten stood down as president of the movement in 1978 and was followed by Prince Charles, now King Charles III. And that's really when the expansion took off with, and also the NC system that, so as Jill said, was already there, really started to become a global movement with selection committees all around the world. Into the Americas, into Africa, into Asia and other parts. And if you look at it now, we often look at it as a linear movement where we see colleges joining every couple of years. And of course, it was a little bit messier than that. But if you look at that timeline and at the various colleges in their size, in their shape, but also in the type of governance and partnerships that they've created, you can only be impressed by how diverse it is. And I think it is diverse because of the unique partnerships that we have followed. We haven't done this alone. We've done it with others. Just to mention a few, we created partnerships with other charities, like the Red Cross in Norway or the SOS Children's Villages in Costa Rica. We created partnerships with governments, regional and national governments, like Friuli Venezia Giulia in Italy, which created UWC Adriatic, or the Limburg province in my school, in Maastricht, which also created the ability to generate government funding. We created alliances with corporations like Mahindra in India, or with the Robert Bosch Stiftung, a charity in Germany. And I think it was this spirit to not do it alone, but to find others who were willing to help us and willing to fund us, that speaks to the diversity that we have in our movement today. I was going to keep it short. So happy birthday, Atlantic College. Happy birthday, the Atlantic Colleges. Happy birthday, UWC. And happy birthday to all of you and to the people online. Let's celebrate. Thank you very much.
Today's a really exciting day because the Queen is coming to visit, and we prepared just a little exhibition of what life at Atlantic College is like.
Most of the school is incredibly excited at the Queen coming, and it's a huge opportunity for all of us to be able to speak to her and meet her, and generally just to be able to share in this massive occasion for the college. This day means a lot, and it's a good opportunity to be able to show ourselves and the massive cultures that we have here, and to share that with any visitors is a huge pleasure for all of us anytime. But if it's a royal visitor, the Queen, Duke of Edinburgh, it's even more special.
The Queen unveiled a plaque to commemorate her visit. The a cappella choir performed. And generally she just met with students, saw the plans for the new master plan on campus, met with different students talking about Amnesty Street Theatre, lifeguarding, and various aspects of student life, including the co-curricular.
I'm here to represent, along with a few other students, the IB Visual Arts course. So we've set up some of our work on 2 boards, and I have some of my ceramic 3D pieces as well on the table, and we just want to show her the creative ideas at our school.
The experiential core that we're having in AC is so diverse. I mean, in terms of it can be music, it can be theater, it can be beekeeping, whatever it is, but like it was really important for every one of us to show this and to show how much we enjoy it and how thankful we were.
I was very nervous in the beginning because, of course, it was my first time meeting the British royalty. But when the Duke and the Queen came, they're all very nice. The Queen, of course, is the patron, and I think it's very important for her to see what has changed since her last visit, because the school's always changing. There's something going on all the time, and I think it's very nice that this event kind of bring the whole community together.
And that really sort of concluded with the daughter of the principal, John Walmsley, giving a bunch of flowers to her, and then they left, and to much applause and to much sort of celebration.
I think it was a really good way for us to show how we appreciate everything we have here in AC, and like all the support that also the royal family brings to the school. So I think it was a great way for us to be thankful for all the help we're having here. So.
The college and the students really wanted to work alongside each other to really kind of show Her Royal Majesty exactly what we do here, what Atlantic College is part of, as well as the UWC mission as a whole, and how we really want to work towards a better and more sustainable future.
To speak about the UWC National Committee system, please welcome Andrew Malstead.
Hello everyone. They've called another history teacher to the stand. I also teach literature, so hopefully I can tell a bit of a story as well. Tonight and tomorrow we tell stories of the bold founders of Atlantic College, men who from the start had a sense that their foundations might lay a movement. And yet these men made a quite radical choice that is often overlooked in the histories of the movement. The school would not choose its own students. Unlike nearly every other secondary and tertiary educational institution in the world. Students would be chosen by national committees, a term, as Jill told us, was there right from 1962. And this important difference that representatives of a nation might decide for themselves who the best students were set in motion a radical change for education. This choice, as much as almost anything, set in motion a decentralization of authority that has made the diversity of our movement one of its defining features today. Just about 2 years ago, along with 2 colleagues, we identified this gap in the histories of UWC history, in the gap of stories that were told about UWC. So we scoured the written histories of UWC, and we spoke to scores, literally dozens of UWC luminaries, many of you in this room, about the history of the National Committee system, and we have written a history of national committees. From our research, we have identified loosely five periods in the history of national committees that can be mapped onto the history of UWC. In the early years until 1968, students were mostly selected by ministries of foreign affairs, by other relevant ministries or other irrelevant ministries, as according to Keith, or other major organizations. But the geographic scope remained very much focused on the North Atlantic. The Mountbatten years, from 1968 to 1978, oversaw an extraordinary global expansion. As Mountbatten traveled, he would tell every head of state he met to send 2 kids to these UWCs. And then one of their secretaries of education, or then turn to their secretary of education and say, Mountbatten told me something about these UWCs. I don't know what they are, but do something about it. With the opening of new schools in the 70s and 80s, more and more alumni began to return home. And the first generation of national committees, established first by Desmond Hoare and Kurt Hahn and Mountbatten's network, gave way to young alumni, imbued with a sense of legacy from their own transformative experience. In this era, which we mark from 1978 to 1997, the International Office, especially under the leadership of Sir Ian Gourlay, focused on supporting the growth of national committees and on alumni transitioning into leadership roles in the NCs. But beginning in the late 1990s, with an NC system now firmly led by alumni and a broader revolution in media technologies that would facilitate an unprecedented standardization and coordination of knowledge, NCs began to agitate for change. Alumni began asking themselves, how do we ensure that we are not selecting ourselves? Even if UWC had been defined by diversity from the start, the definition of diversity began to shift from simply a representative of a nation to questions of race, ethnicity, gender, indigeneity, and class. New technologies like email, websites, and later social media changed how NCs worked in their countries, and maybe more importantly, how they worked together. There was a decision at the International Office to use one very old technology, the conference, to fund national committee members to come together on a regular scale. This gathering, almost like a cult-like meeting, as it was described by one person, was essential to bonding the national committee system, to networking it within itself. And we marked the start of our most recent era in 2015 with the establishment of the CNC. For the first time, NCs had a formal institutional representation in UWC's governance. And this story, of course, is still being written today. Thanks.
Siempre digo que UWC Costa Rica fue una utopía.
Es hat für mich mein ganzes Leben verändert.
Estava livre.
I won't forget my first love, spending a week in the rainforest, but I will never forget the support I received from my friends.
Это было невероятно волшебно.
Todos estábamos en el mismo lugar y tiempo de nuestras vidas.
I think nobody was scared to dream in UWC.
Where I lived my life in ways that I could never have imagined.
Wir weinten gemeinsam, wir lachten, wir trauerten.
يعني هو جزء ما بيتجزأ من حياتي للآن يعني.
E quindi sì, soprattutto emozioni di nostalgia e felicità.
Mudança é o que significa para mim.
To celebrate some of the leaders of our movement, please welcome Lawrence Noda and Lau Karon.
Jill spoke about unearthing and employing Keith to look through the records to try and find and to remember our history. And I was briefed to speak a little bit about the long-serving chairs and the long-serving heads. And I don't have either the time or, in fact, the information to speak much about the chairs. I only want to mention one. who was a founder of a national committee, Christian Hodeiger, the German National Committee, who served as the chair of the International Board for 9 years, and for the last decade has been the vice chair and proxy chair within the UWC of Robert Bosch College, and without whom I wouldn't be in Freiburg. So Christian, on behalf of all the chairs, if I could honor you in particular. Yeah. I've had the good fortune of knowing the founding heads of all but 4 of the current UWCs. And again, it's going to be for each college to tell its own story. And I think those stories are important to be told in this year of our 60th anniversary, and for them to be known. And in 3 or 4 minutes, I can't speak of every one. But I thought I would mention, first of all, the heads that I didn't particularly know who had served 10 years or more, and then the heads that I have known who've served 10 years or more, stopping more or less about a decade ago. Not because there haven't been heads who've served for a long time since then, but I think it's safer in one way to not to speak of current heads and people who've recently departed. So the 4 heads that served for 10 years or more in the early days were Jack Matthews, the founder of Pearson College, Athol Jennings, who took Waterford, that was founded in the same academic year as Atlantic College, and brought it into the UWC movement towards the end of his headship, but he also served for a decade at Waterford Kamhlaba. Ted Lockwood, who was the founder of UWC USA, and who I didn't know, and David Watson, who served for a decade at UWC Southeast Asia. Then I came in 1999, which for me doesn't seem a very long time ago, and I came in at a remarkable period. At that stage, there were 9 heads of schools that also offered the IB diploma. Of course, schools and colleges, there were some schools that were the full, Singapore and Waterford, and then the others were the colleges. But 7 of those 9 heads went on, or were towards the end of service that went, in many cases, over decades and at least for 10 years. And some of those names have already been mentioned. They were all great heads, and would have been great heads in any school context. And I would just give one little thing that I took away from knowing them. To begin with, I was sponsored by the Dutch and Norwegian national committees to visit 3 colleges. And I would recommend, when we think about the longevity of heads in the current times, I would still recommend this. It was a fabulous introduction to UWC. The first people I visited were Colin and Isabel Jenkins. And if I took one thing from Colin, and I took many more, it was, if we thought of this as a 2-year educational experience, it was very expensive. But if we thought of it as a 40-year investment, then it was really good value. And that has always been something that I have remembered. Next, I saw David and Elizabeth Sutcliffe at Adriatic. And from David, I took away the idea that international education had to be taken into parts of the world that needed it most. And that was why he went to the Adriatic and why the Adriatic College was placed there and onwards to Mostar. And then I went north to Red Cross Nordic, where I met Tony and Anne McCown, and I discovered people who were champions of the IB. And there are many, particularly in Canada, there are hardly any of the original IB schools that didn't have some contact with Tony. At my first heads meeting, I also met, and then met many times after, David and Veronica Wilkinson, who were the first people to, in my circle, who challenged aspects of the IB and wondered to what extent it was and particularly around the core, to what extent it was appropriate for UWC students. And David in particular was a great advocate of world studies and tried somehow to get our students, all students, to have an aspect of world studies, for instance, in their EE. I also met Phil and Amy. And with Phil, I remember his consummate efforts in resourcing his school. Shelby Davis wasn't the only person he found. He found many, many, many donors to support UWC USA. And then what I remember so much about Phil was that he expanded that. He didn't simply keep it for the UWC USA. He expanded the good fortune of that college and the connections of that college into the wider movement. And we remain beneficiaries of that through his having brought Shelby Davis into our movement. I visited that December Andrew and Pat Bennett at UWC SEA. And when we had the great pleasure of meeting Andrew and Pat again this week. But when I think of Andrew and what I witnessed of his leadership at SEA, it was an understated competence and decency. He wasn't the champion, the hero standing up at the front, but he ran a good and honest and robust school. Highly impressive. And I also met Blair and Wendy Foster. And when I think, I didn't remember this morning, but tomorrow you'll see me wearing a tie. It is a tie that Blair gave me, one of the founding prefect's ties of Li Puchun. And I wear it at every UWC function where I'm required to wear a tie in memory of a man of great courage. And when he discovered he had a brain tumor, he didn't think, well, now's the time for my bucket list. He carried on in office extraordinary devotion to Li Puchun College. So those were the 7 head couples that I met out of the 9 of the IB diploma schools and colleges. An incredible team of people who hardly agreed on anything. It was always a rowdy meeting, but it was always interesting. After that, John and Nikki moved from Atlantic College to Red Cross Nordic. And John and Nikki were able to stay there and serve that school for a decade. And when I think about them, it was never about them. It was always about the individuals, about people, about the community, and about the mission and values. And they are people in whose debt I am. Now, I leave to last someone who I think only in this room, only Ines knows. Maybe Anna will have heard, and Lau might have heard, of Dick and Enid Iington, who moved to Waterford in 1971. And in Ines' second year, Dick became principal of Waterford, and he left eventually in 1995 to become National Director of SOS Children's Villages in the midst of the AIDS pandemic in Southern Africa and in Eswatini, Swaziland. And in 2003, he was asked to go to Somaliland to reopen a school that had been closed in fighting in those parts and destroyed, almost completely destroyed by fighting in 1989. And he went there and reopened that school, rebuilt that school with about 45 young men and women, many of whom had not been able to go to school yet. And Dick and Enid were murdered, assassinated later that year. Dick and Enid were dead by mentors. I don't know why I'm so emotional, but theirs was an extraordinary commitment to the liberation struggle in Southern Africa, and also to the power of education to transform the lives of young people and to transform society. And I think we stand here, and we are the inheritors of incredible legacies throughout the history of these people who served UWC in such extraordinary ways. And I think we have a responsibility as we take forward their legacy. Thank you.
I'm Mariana.
Can you hear me? I am Lau.
And we're members of the Committee of National Committees.
The National Committee system is unique to UWC. It is also the habitat for the majority of the 4,000 plus volunteers that make our movement so special, and where many UWC graduates and UWC friends find a community beyond the confines of their own UWC experience. Wherever in the world you find a member of a national committee, you know that you have family.
This takes several shapes, from hosting students from another national committee for several days because they've been denied boarding on a flight and are stranded in a country that's foreign to them, picking up students at airports and helping them cross borders by foot minutes before travel restrictions due to COVID closed borders between countries, and sharing resources and good practices to uplift each other, leaning on each other whenever in need. The anecdotes are endless, and the names are too many to mention individually, as each member of the National Committee is important and makes this beautiful network possible.
Being involved in our national committee gives us the opportunity to give back, to continue to live and to amplify the mission in our communities. It has a ripple effect, which goes further than the students that we select. It touches their families, their friends, their original schools, even the applicants who don't get selected but who get a taste of what UWC is about and are inspired to embrace UWC values while exploring other paths.
UWC school and college communities interact with us through the students we select, and a lot of our work is not immediately visible. We are not driven by individual recognition or reward, but by knowing that through our collective effort, we are contributing to the growth and sustainability of the movement.
And in that spirit, we would like to invite some of our colleagues from the NC system to share what being a member of the National Committee system means to them. I don't know if you have a microphone.
So running UWC selections is my annual reminder of the promise of youth. It's a great and wonderful privilege to be able to help bright, engaged, committed young people extend their ability to impact the world.
What I enjoy the most is playing a small part in helping raise awareness about a movement which has been so instrumental in changing the lives of my peers and I, and everyone who's had the good fortune of experiencing it.
No matter where in the world you move throughout your life, you always have a volunteer job lined up for you.
I graduated 25 years ago and I still dream of that place, and that's the kind of impact I would like to have on other children.
Being part of a national committee system is giving back for me. So many people have full-heartedly supported me, cared for me, made me who am I. And so it's my duty to share this opportunity with all that youth who deserves a good and right future.
I've been in the NC system, I have been in the UWC Ethiopia National Committee for over 24 years. And it's a movement that is really hard to stop, volunteering. And it's really very, you hear so many stories, quite rewarding. Non-stop. So it's really, for me, it's very impactful.
When you go to work, you are motivated to earn money.
We are lucky, some of us, if we go to work and we do enjoy and love the work that we do. I don't work for the movement, but I do enjoy the volunteering part of it. What I would like to also say, that imagine that it's not only me, but I'm surrounded by 20 such persons who actually do the volunteering part and don't ask for money. They don't ask for appreciation. They know that they are giving back. And that's what you said, that it's the impact. It's not only the 2 years, but it's life-lasting commitment that we all take upon us. So,
being an NC volunteer and an educator is joining all of you in casting my prayers to the sky that we will discover and have the next Mahatma Gandhis, the next Nelson Mandelas, the next Albert Einstein, the next Marie Curies we serve.
This way? That way. Okay, sorry. So going to UWC was a dream come true for me. And I don't just come from one of the poorest countries in the world, but at that time it was the poorest country in the world. And they just couldn't fathom that some good people out there would invest that much in me. And they have always felt indebted and have always, I always knew that they would give back forever. And also the fact that every single time that you tell a child from, my background and you see their eyes just light up, makes me relive that experience all over again.
I hope that was a taste of what the NC system is all about. Like Ludovic said, we do this together. Thank you.
You just learn how to think differently as well. Your mind just gets open so much. I honestly believe that you can't come to UWC and leave as the same person.
The UWC Scholar is a young change maker who follow very much the UWC mission and values of looking out for the environment, the community, the people around them. As a UWC movement, we take them from a very local scale to scale them up and hopefully widen the perspective to see that change can be so much more to the rest of the world.
After seeing and experiencing everything I have that UWC has allowed me to do, so I realized that there's so much more that can be improved back at home, and that's something that I know I definitely want to work on in the future.
To celebrate UWC's mission impact in the area of service, please welcome Nick Olchin, Head of UWC Southeast Asia.
Sorry about that. What I'm going to share today, I know is shared by many schools and colleges, but it's lovely to be able to share a bit of a Southeast Asian flavour. Can you play the video, please? Okay, looks like the tech is the curse today. What I hope you would have seen there, I'm going to tell you what you would have seen there, would be images of students of all ages, from K to 12, and the words you would have seen and the ideas you would have seen are around connection, complexity, systems thinking, SDGs, people and planet, and extending service from just service, not just service, to service and sustainable development. That's where we are today. It's what we're aspiring to do. It's not always perfect, but we're seeking to make students aware, able, and to be able to act. We are a big school, so a lot of things happen. But what I want to do is perhaps take you on the journey of how it all started, because it was very, very different many years ago. When we go back to the early 70s, the focus was very much on local service and fundraising. And there were partnerships with local schools, for sure. The early one that's still going, it's a 50-year strong partnership now, is the movement with the intellectually disabled of Singapore. And even the words themselves tell you that it probably wouldn't be called that today. But it's a 50-year-old organisation, and the students worked with it. A really big focus was on something called marathon days, where students would end up doing things for 24 hours or 48 hours. In this case, in a tree for 48 hours. I'm not quite sure it would get by the risk assessment these days, but it was fun, and there's the pillow there that helped a lot, I believe. Another one that we did in those days was canoeing down storm drains to raise money, which was certainly risk-taking, I think, is something that we've heard a bit about, and it certainly happened. In those days, the projects were very much student-led. They still are. And the theme continued as we grew into a different college. In 1997, we opened a primary school, and the flavour of service changed for us. We had older students working with younger students, often their own brothers and sisters, and it became less necessarily about only going to do things and more really looking intentionally and very sort of carefully at trying to shape young minds and trying to look at attitudes and reflection and to really move hearts and minds through awareness as well as anything else. The service program developed enormously, and I think we've already had allusion in our heads meeting to the fact that primary school teachers think slightly differently to secondary school teachers, and we've really sort of taken that spirit forward rapidly. In particular, and I think it's worth saying a little bit about this, because I think for our younger students, the word transformative education is there, but it's a slightly misleading thing, because we don't transform students from something to something else. It just becomes who they are. When our 4-year-olds make a Christmas box for the patients in the old people's home, they have to think, what would someone at that stage of life want? They have to take themselves from their own point of view and put it in someone else's. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they give them candies and other things, but the point is that it becomes integrated into what they do. So it's developmentally suitable, and what it means is that we have students graduating who've had 12 or 14 years of partnering with an organisation. They've grown up in that organisation. So as we've grown, there are many things that we've done, but I think when I look at our students graduating, I think that's probably the thing that's most moving when you see them with the services that sometimes they leave for the last time when they're 18, and you can see it. It's like graduating. It's a big thing. I'll give you one example further of how our service programs develop, because I think it's really inspired me. I started working with this service, Apex Harmony Lodge, where it's I know you can't read the text, don't worry, but it's a home where Alzheimer's patients are working to live and to live successfully, and our students would go. And I remember I went with that, and we did some good work. But then a music teacher took over, and he noticed that when he played certain bits of music, the patients came alive a bit more. And we read up with the students, and the students told us, they went and did research, and they came to understand the condition. And we understood then that music helps those students, helps those patients be different people. And so then it got around a bit that maybe we could do something with music, and it began to be musical. And then we realized that certain songs have a bigger inspiration. The students noticed that certain songs have a bigger impact than others. So they got together with the Coding for Good team, and they got together with the lawyers at Spotify, and they said, how could it be that we could actually use Spotify to do a search and to search all the intellectual copyrights that looks at genres and themes? And then the Singapore government said, hey, could you write that app for us? And we're not there yet. But what I want to just show you is just something that started off by a just doing service. But then when you go with the idea of how can we help, how can we go in with a service mindset? How can we shift from doing things to understanding and getting in a design cycle, that things really happen magically? So we're on a really big journey with this. We're not there yet, but we really are trying to move from service to sustainable partnerships that last over the decades and that can scale up. So there are many things there, but essentially it's really about helping our students to see the opportunities for service wherever they are. And it's one of the most moving things I've seen in the movement. I know this is shared by all the schools and colleges in their own way. I just wanted to give you a flavour of some of the history as we've seen our journey go from doing service to service and sustainable partnerships as a theme. I don't know what's next, but it's certainly been a really exciting roller coaster getting here. And it's a privilege to be able to share it a little bit with you. Thank you.
To learn more about UWC's mission impact in the area of peace, please welcome Sonia Rawat, Head of UWC Mosta.
Give me a moment, please. There have been so many beautiful stories shared. I don't know how much I can add to it, but it's my honor to represent a really, really beautiful school in the UWC movement. And I see a lot of people here in this room who are associated with that school in so many different ways, who have contributed to what it is today and who continue to do so as well. So before I start, thank you to all of you. You know who you are here in this room. We stand on the shoulders of giants. So many of you have already named them, and I don't want to do that. But for those of us who do not know the Mostar story, it starts with David Sutcliffe, who's been mentioned so many times this evening, and his Finnish student, Pilvi Torsti, who Adrian earlier in the day referred to, an alumna of Adriatic College. During the Bosnian war years, David, as the head of UWC Adriatic, took many students from the refugee camps. And he was deeply impacted by the situation and regularly discussing with his students in Adriatic College. Some years later, I'm doing big leaps and jumps. I have very little time. So some years later, after the war, Pilvi did her PhD on the teaching of history in Bosnia and Herzegovina. With its segregated education system, its 2 schools under one roof reality in some places, 3 history textbooks for 3 different nationalities, etc. She was at an Adriatic College event when David made an interesting statement, and I think Adrian referred to this statement too earlier today, about international education and UWCs. How they should not be where they can be afforded, but where they are most needed. On being urged to act on his own belief, he proposed a UWC of Eastern Europe in Mostar, which, with the hard work of the 3 musketeers, Antonin Bess, David Sutcliffe, Pilvi Torsti, and later joined by Elzbiet Ren, Lamia Tanovic, and Yasmin Kabratic, became a reality in 2006. This UWC, that was first started as a temporary collaborative project between the IB and UWC, obviously had such relevance and impact that it then became a full-fledged UWC and a part of the movement, celebrating its 15th anniversary last year. In this year, when the UWC movement commences its 60th anniversary celebrations, congratulations to all of us. When our flagship college celebrates 60 years, congratulations to everyone at Atlantic College. When we celebrated UWC Day with the theme of Peace Begins With Us, I'd like to reflect on whether UWC Mostar is still where it is needed the most. The college, when many of you, I think, have seen it, or at least you've seen an image. There was an image earlier as well in one of the videos. It is housed in this impressive Austro-Hungarian chrome-colored building, orange, some will say, which was restored after the war. And I believe that the college makes an important statement just by existing in this building. The reason being that it shares these premises with the local high school, which has 2 separate curriculums and 2 separate sets of teachers. So the students come in and go to different classes based on whether they identify this way or that way in terms of the nationality, and they study there. For UWC Mostar, some of our classrooms, our offices and science laboratories are housed in this building. And the interesting thing is that all the 3 nationalities our students belong to, Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs, all of them come and study not only the same curriculum in the same classrooms from the same teachers, but they also share the same living spaces, sometimes even sharing rooms. And this itself is a demonstration of the possibility of the kind of inclusive education that is possible even in this still divided city and this country with the segregated education system. While the students do a lot of outreach work, some of the kind that Nick just showed, SEA students doing, including project weeks, service classes, their presence in the city due to the city is our campus model when they go to gym, or they go to play football, or they go to the local rock school for music lessons. It adds to the diversity of this city, which is really homogeneous, in spite of the differences that are claimed. It quietly sends a positive message. This was so wonderfully brought out. It is every year, but I think this year was really particularly so in the UWC Day celebration we had last Saturday. So these are the images that we don't have the images. Do we have them? Wait. Yeah, so these, no, they've got some wrong presentation. It's okay. If you can get the right one, then they can see them. Is that possible? This is a different presentation. Do we have the right one? Okay. If we can get it, great. Otherwise, we had the UWC Day celebration. And the most amazing thing about this day, and I think this is really the message that we're getting from the college, was that in this city where we still have people who would not cross from one side to the other, our students, not just the Bosnian, Serb and Croat students from the city of Mostar or from the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also from the greater region, from the countries of Croatia, Montenegro, Serbia, North Macedonia, Albania, all of these countries, they all decide not to have separate stalls the way that all the other countries are going to have, but they have them all together. And they display their food together, their culture together, and you can see all these students with their flags on their backs, and they are huddled together. And I wish you had been able to see the images. They're very, very powerful. They're huddled together, and then we hear the local people say, "We have not seen these flags close like this since before the war." What could be more powerful than that. This is 30 years after. And then the students decide to do a performance together on the path, on the road. They all sit down close together with these flags and they sing a single song in unison. And you can see so many people stopping there on the path with tears in their eyes. And this is really the work that we are able to do without even trying to do something in an obvious way. But yes, of course, we are doing a lot more things. No, there's not enough time for me to tell you about all of them. But one of the major things that we are doing, apart from the work that our students do, is trying to impact the education system in the country. And we end up doing a lot of teacher training, working with the pedagogical institutes, with the universities, with the teacher training programs. That is something that really contributes to the kind of impact that a college like UWC Mostar is. Yesterday, while speaking with the heads, Musimbi said something which I remember. Our world is in trouble. It needs our mission even more today. And that made me really think that, yes, I think UWC Mostar is needed where it is, even today, and for many years to come. And we hope that it is true that peace begins with us at UWC Mostar.
And finally, to focus on UWC's mission impact on sustainability, please welcome Mauricio Viales, head of UWC Costa Rica.
More paper. Now for the slides. Thank you. Good afternoon. Buenos días desde Costa Rica. It's 11 o'clock in my home country. Climate action discussions held last week during the United Nations General Assembly point out known truths. There is a disconnect between the commitments made in COP26 and the capacity to see them through. The climate crisis has only underlined inequalities across the planet, where developing countries, which have contributed little to climate change, are among the most vulnerable to its effects. The question leading discussions towards COP27 in Egypt next November is November 2022, is who pays for climate damage. Reparations and a more inclusive global financial system must be obtained. As schools and colleges pledge commitments to these global agendas, we must evaluate how these inequalities might be reflected within our own UWC movement and communities. Environmental policy has been key in Costa Rica. The country has pushed forth the National Decarbonization Plan, aiming to reform transport, energy, waste, and a land use to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. This means producing no more emissions than we can offset through actions such as responsible and efficient forest management. These kinds of policies have largely been possible thanks to funding such as allocations from the Global Climate Action Fund, investments, grants, and donations from governments, NGOs, and the private sector, proving that clean and green development is possible and profitable. However, true transformation implies paradigm and perception shifts. Reconceptualizing what development means and how we measure it carefully, not to leave out the structural roots causes that created the problems we face in the first place, so as not to reinforce them within our schools. We know we need to push for systemic thinking and change. We know we need to focus on equity and inclusivity, promoting multiple voices and looking towards ecological, ancestral, indigenous, feminist, and local wisdom as sources for learning and being. System change, not climate change. We also know we are on a good track. Knowing all of this, putting into practice our commitments through various initiatives, projects, and policies. Just to highlight a few, Robert Bosch leading the carbon footprint monitoring and unification of sustainability actions across UWCs through the website and repository of experiences. Pearson with their Climate Action Leadership Diploma, Mahindra Biodiversity Research and Youth Environment and Sustainability Program, Southeast Asia with Sustainable Building Management, Thailand Mangrove Reforestation Project, and all the projects that other UWCs are developing. At UWC Costa Rica, we have been asking ourselves the question on how can we create a culture of sustainability. In response, as part of our new 22-27 strategic plan, we created a sustainability framework, understanding sustainability as a mindset, ethical guideline for well-being, balance, and reciprocity. It comprises guiding our sustainability principles needed to transition towards becoming a sustainable school which cuts across all areas of the college. The framework also establishes different action areas, helping us frame all of our policies, operations, governance systems, actions, alliances, programs, and curriculum throughout sustainability, the sustainability lens. Looking toward the growth of our new campus next to the Braulio Carrillo National Park, the second largest national park in the country, where more than 70% of the property is already a forest reserve of the college. This new construction would assure the regenerative and responsible impact on surrounding communities and ecosystems. Our buildings would seek high efficiency standards and low emission processes through using natural materials and low impact and renewable energy technologies, which in turn are educational opportunities for our UWC community and local agents. A sustainable future intrinsically implies working in collaboration. The quality of our partnerships, collaborative work, methodologies, and relationships with different communities will determine the type of impact we will have. Understanding the challenge at hand and honoring the actions already put forth towards facing it, I have been invited and honored to introduce the UWC Sustainability Brochure to you. It has been produced by the IO team, so I don't get any credit for that. It presents programs, initiatives, and actions across the entire UWC movement, centered around 4 key areas. Climate strategies and green campus initiatives, that's one. Second, educational innovation. Third, curriculum and green skills, engagement and citizenship. And fourth, climate justice. I would like to close sharing with you what Musimbi most wisely expressed yesterday during a conversation we had between heads and chairs about sustainability. Change can only happen locally, but its impact is stronger if we work collectively. Our best regards from our dear Costa Rica, as we are competing who is first and who is second, the first Latin American UWC, sadly the only one. I hope to see more representation from our region in the movement. Thank you.
I was a good student there because the schooling experience there is so much different from here, because we didn't actually have the opportunities to expand ourselves in multi-dimension. For sure, economic condition not that much good enough to support the students with their education. I have been working myself from very childhood to support myself. I was Shoshan boy for a long time. I was every day after school, mostly I would say every day, I go to local markets. In Sundays, I would go to churches and other wedding places where I could shine polish people's shoes, get paid. And besides that, I actually work with my family because my parents are farmers. It has a good memory, and actually, I would say, I don't really regret about it. I can feel really huge change in me. Actually, this place has been a great place where I could actually find myself. It has been a great place which actually fostered exploration, which I'm been taking place to find who actually I am and where actually I'm going. I dream of having some kind of chemical research institute or maybe chemical industry based on Ethiopia or across Africa, where I can work through the local universities. So I want to be someone who actually can translate the knowledge I have to something significant, something tangible. I promise you that I would try everything I can to reach my full potential, to do something meaningful and beautiful. I promise that the contribution you gave in my life will always have a meaning. UWC, it was really preparatory. It prepared me in many ways. And I believe you guys all will notice and acknowledge this thing once you guys will join to the college. And whichever colleges you choose, you're gonna see the fingerprint of UWC on you, that it will help you to navigate through all the resources, meeting with people and other experiences.
Please welcome Lynn Kobayashi, founder of UWC, Isaac, Japan.
Thank you. Wow, that was powerful. So today, I've been asked to speak as not only as the chair of the International Philanthropy Committee, but also as a UWC alumna. Just like Woknet, I think his name was, I was a full scholarship student 30 years ago. I had a privilege to study at Leicester VPSN College, then it was called, because I spoke almost no word of English back then. I struggled. I remember not being able to go through the immigration because I couldn't understand what was being asked. I understood almost nothing in classes, and I barely understood anything. All the conversations in cafeteria was a mystery for me. And it didn't take me long to become friends with friends from Latin American countries who were going through similar struggles. And during the summer break, one of them, Yuria, who I'm still in touch with, she invites me to come to her house in Mexico City for 1 month. When I landed, her house was a very modest house that stood by the highway of Mexico City that literally shook almost every time a truck passed by. I was like, wow. And seeing me taken aback by the reality of life in Mexico City, one weekend, her family decides to take me to a slum area. I feel like I can still remember the heat, the smells and the scenes from that day. The children are running around without going to school. The adults were sitting in front of the house, looking at the empty air. And I said to myself, maybe for the first time in my life, how fortunate I was just be able to go to school. And some people say that there are only 2 days that are important in your life. One day is the day you were born. The other is the day you find the purpose of your life. And that summer day in Mexico City, for me, became that day. And I promised myself at the age of 17 that any blessing or luck that I receive would be used not for myself, but to serve a wider community. And some of you, or many of you, know what happened in the years that followed and how it led me to found UWC Isaac Japan. And that would not have been possible without that one scholarship that got me to Pearson College, and all the generosity of the donors who not only founded the Pearson College, but also people who continue to support Pearson College. It literally changed my life. And then now it's touching hundreds of more. And I know across the movement there's so many similar stories like this, that one scholarship ended up impacting the lives of many, and hundreds and thousands. And that is the power of UWC education. So of course, our deepest appreciation goes to Shelby and Gail Davis, who have supported to date over 500 scholarships through Dare to Dream program, and 1,200 university scholarships for our alumni through UWC scholarship program, Davis UWC scholarship program. And we are also immensely grateful to the founders and founders of the schools and colleges across the movement, and the donors and supporters of our scholarships and national committees, who range from governments, businesses, foundations, international NGOs, world leaders and philanthropists, and of course, our alumni. Lastly, I promised Faith that I keep short, so I've done some progress. But yeah, so lastly, I am very convinced that in today's increasingly divided world, with so many complex problems that no single nation or region can solve by its own, the UWC movement is more relevant than ever. So it is my strong hope that we can take this opportunity to celebrate the tremendous generosity of our donors and supporters across the movement and the world who make UWC education possible, and to join forces to create an even wider circle of donors and supporters so that our next 60 years can continue to impact the lives of next future change makers. So thank you, and happy birthday to Atlantic College as well as the UWC movement. Thank you.
It all started, strangely enough, in the NATO Defence College in Paris. The Atlantic College is, of course, nothing whatever to do with NATO. Now, after nearly 6 years, we have 230 boys from 35 countries. And this term, for the first time, 9 girls as well.
It seems to me that a great many people spend a great deal of time telling us what is wrong with the world we live in, and precious few of them do anything about it. That is why I've now agreed to become the president of the International Council of the United World Colleges. I obtained the consent of the International Council to change its name to United World College.
An international council is responsible for the development of these colleges. National committees in many countries throughout the world select students and provide scholarship funds. The aim is the development of human understanding through education.
It's a rather, as I don't hesitate to say, idealistic approach towards education.
The college is adopting the International Baccalaureate. This examination will qualify its students for entry to universities throughout the world.
And the whole point about these colleges, and I must emphasize this, is they are not schools for wealthy people's children or the sons and daughters of diplomats or whatever, politicians or princes. But in order to come here, you must qualify.
One of the things that was clear to us from day one was that if Atlantic College was to be the only one, the project was not worthwhile.
Why not start a chain of international schools for teenagers in the cause of peace?
I'm leaving here this summer to take up the headship of the new college of the Adriatic.
It gives me enormous pleasure to declare this college well and truly open.
That is a teaser for a forthcoming UWC history video. I hope your appetite is well and truly whetted. So dear members of the UWC International Board, International Council, chairs and heads of the UWC schools and colleges, teachers, staff, donors, volunteers, friends, family, alumni from all generations, welcome. Today is a really special day, and this is a really special moment where we congregate to celebrate the uniqueness of the UWC movement, to reflect on our journey to date, and to dream together about our future. Today we begin a year-long celebration of a mission that has brought us together from all corners of the world, a mission so powerful that causes the wealthiest in society to donate their castles, a mission so endearing that thousands and thousands of people volunteer thousands and thousands of hours year upon year in order to facilitate access to opportunity for those whom they hardly know. This is a mission so tangible that causes parents to send their most precious assets, their children, more than halfway across the world in pursuit of a life-changing opportunity and the promise of a better tomorrow. This is a mission so critical that we are willing to commit time, treasure, talent, expertise, and everything that we have got, because we truly believe that a better world is in sight. We believe that we can build peaceful societies, that we can transform communities, that we can rebuild nations caught in never-ending spirals of conflict, that we can make our planet a more sustainable place for all species, plants, animals, and human. We gather today because we believed Coach Han when he said that there is more in us than we think, and that if only we could be made to see it, we would be unwilling to settle for less than the world needs. We gather here today, and we gather online across time zones, across borders of nationality, of ideology, of personality, of background, of race and religion and socioeconomic origins. We gather here because we have not given up on our planet. We have not given up on our shared humanity, and we have not given up on the prospect of peace. We believe that of all the vehicles through which we can make the world a better place, our former UWC president, Nelson Mandela, was right, that education is the most powerful weapon that we can use to change the world. And it's under this umbrella of education that we have come together to envision a better world. It is this cause of education that led Coach Han and Lawrence Duval and Desmond Hoare and all the other pioneers to believe that if the world was going to emerge in a better place after the Cold War, and if we were ever going to prevent large-scale conflicts in the future, our best possible chance for achieving that is to invest in education opportunities. International and intercultural understanding were the key for this educational proposition. And I could not be prouder today to be a fellow steward alongside each of you of this powerful promise. I could not be more grateful to live in a world where we believe that our efforts will yield tangible results. And I could not be more humbled to acknowledge that we have achieved so much already in 60 years, and to imagine how much more we can achieve together. Together we have developed a powerful educational offering that inspires young people to enthusiastically share their cultures and experiences with each other as they acquire the skills, the competences, the mindsets, and the networks that enable them to take active roles in transforming sectors, nations, and the world at large. Together we have grown from one institution to 18 institutions, attracting the most exceptional teachers, experts, researchers, mentors, coaches, counselors, house parents, residential advisors, kitchen staff, cleaning staff, bus drivers, security guards, the true unsung heroes of our movement who work day and night investing in the development of the future leaders of our world. These are people who labor, just like the builders of the Cathedral of Milan, over several generations, building a masterpiece, the completion of which they might never see in their lifetimes. Together we have expanded our offerings far beyond the borders of our colleges. We have inspired short courses all across the world. We have contributed to the development of the International Baccalaureate that today serves thousands and several thousands of students every year across the world. And we have even stimulated the establishment of many other schools, the founders of whom wish to join our ranks because they believe that what we offer is valuable And Lynn is a perfect example of that, how magical it is that alumni of our movement, including former teachers and staff, are leading the charge for establishing new UWC schools and colleges. We have so much to be proud of. And as a movement, we have earned recognition from far and wide. From our 2017 recognition as recipients of the Luxembourg Peace Prize for Exceptional Education for Peace, to our 2022 nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize itself. From our partnership with the European Commission to educate Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot students, to our commitment to the Clinton Global Initiative to educate young women from refugee backgrounds, from our partnership with global humanitarian organizations like the Red Cross and the SOS Children's Villages in establishing UWC colleges, to our recognition by the UNHCR as the first secondary educational partner offering education to refugees. To me, it is quite clear that we are active, we're on the front lines, we are doing the work, and we're making the world a better place. When I think about the vast global network through which UWC schools and colleges welcome students every year, my brain can hardly comprehend it. Because we've got a global army of committed and passionate volunteers who are reaching into the depths of society to find exceptional young people who deserve opportunity. We're generating approximately 25,000 applications every year. We're offering nearly $75 million of scholarships every year. When we speak about what is truly exceptional about a UWC education, I think it is the fact that we are building global communities through the local expertise and community-based leadership of those who are most deepest rooted in society, people who really understand the communities from which our young leaders come. I also believe that we are addressing systemic inequalities in the world by identifying catalysts of change in far-flung corners of the world, and we're granting them access to life-transforming education opportunities. And those opportunities will propel not just them and their families, but whole communities into different phases of development. I think about the multiplier effects of a UWC education and the lives of our alumni who are making tangible differences in the lives of other children across the world. The service projects that they conduct, the beneficiaries of Project Weeks, the children in India who have benefited from the Akshara program at Miyuki, the children in Bosnia and Herzegovina who draw hope from seeing people from across the other side of the divide coming together in a symbolic gymnasium. Think about the families in Diligent who allow themselves to feel hope in the midst of conflict by seeing an outstanding global community planted within their immediate vicinity. I think about the refugees who are otherwise cut off from educational opportunities, who are now receiving their lives back, as it were, because Amala has shown up to deliver first international high school diploma programs for refugees in places like Kakuma in Kenya, in Greece, in Jordan, and beyond. If you take a step back and think about the true influence of UWC in the world, if you think about the opportunities that lie ahead of us and all that we are yet to achieve, your mind should be blown as much as mine is. And when I first joined the UWC movement, nearly everyone who spoke to me asked me the very same question. They all wanted to know what had surprised me the most since I joined UWC. And I think I might have given varying answers on each conversation, but I think I now have a clear answer. What has surprised me the most is the fact that in spite of everything we have achieved and everything that lies ahead of us, for a strange reason, we have taken pride in the fact that UWC is the best kept secret in the world. For the life of me, I can't understand why something so good, so precious, so valuable could be kept a secret. I grew up in a household that treasured our Christian heritage very seriously, and whenever we read the good book, my parents would often repeat one of its verses to us. Let your light so shine that others may see your good works. And so I say to the global UWC community, let your light so shine. In Costa Rica, where the college has become a beacon of hope in helping local schools discover the beauty of the IB, let your light so shine. In Canada, where Pearson College has established such an endearing commitment to protecting the interests of the Shaniu First Nation, let your light so shine. In Eswatini, where Waterford Kamhlaba has literally been the pride of that nation for 60 years, pioneering multiracial education in a region where it was almost a criminal proposition. Let your light so shine. In Germany, where Robert Bosch College demonstrated incredible leadership in the wake of the Russian aggression by volunteering the school bus to drive supplies to people who were displaced by conflict. Let your light so shine. In Thailand, where students are volunteering their time to create sustainable and suitable learning environments for refugees from Myanmar, let your light so shine. Across the world, in Asia, in Oceania, in Europe, in Africa, in the Americas, in the Middle East, my charge to you all across the world is let your light so shine. And so as we celebrate UWC at 60, if I could ask one favor of each of you, it is exactly this. Let your light so shine. I'll invite you to commit that never again will we describe UWC as the world's best kept secret. Let us do everything we can to leverage every platform available to us, with every story known to us, in every way possible. We speak to everyone within reach about the magic of UWC. Because we have said time and time again that the world needs UWC now more than ever before. So it's time for us to prove it in our words and in our actions. You tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend, that UWC truly makes education a force to unite people, nations, and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. So at this time, please join me in wishing a happy 60th birthday to UWC Atlantic and to all of us. Let's have a fabulous year of celebrations. Let's be colorful, let's be joyful, and let's make a lot of noise. Because the world needs us now more than ever before. Hip hip, hooray! Hip hip, hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Happy birthday UWC, and thank you very much. Number 4.